Hello and welcome back to round 4 of CANCON's National Highlander Championships 2019. Thank you very much to Glenn and GoodGames and the Games Capital for hosting us while we film the whole championship. You get to see the wonderful playmat in front of us on Michael's side with the Highlander man, Highlander John, I think his name is technically, smashing the Sensei's Divining Top, which was a controversial point, but yes, Sensei's Dividing Top is dead, but what is not dead is this beautiful pile of cards that Max has brought in front of us. I'm joined here by Philip Nicholson.
Hi.
We're getting later and later and later into the time where I introduce you.
It's alright. I'm sure eventually you'll just forget and maybe people will recognize me by my voice.
And how could they not, after a few videos, and your dulcet tones have filled the minds and hearts of many people so far. So
I'm sure that on All Places, right here, and Australian male talking is very distinct from the other voices they could possibly hear.
Yeah, absolutely. But Max has brought to the table a creation of his own, but something that has been tested in Highlander before. Is Big Red, or as Max likes to call it, Medium Red, because it doesn't get all the way up to Big Red. But on a turn to Verabrusk, what's this?
Urabrusk,
Urabrusk, that's the one. Your creatures gain haste. Your opponent's creatures enter battlefield tapped.
Yeah, legendary creature Praetor.
Oh, there you go.
Obviously the best creature type.
Yeah.
Very necessary to create that creature type for the 5 creatures that have it. It's one of the...
Are they all legendary as well?
Yeah.
The Praetors?
Yeah.
Cool.
I'm not sure if they bothered to reuse it for Atraxa or not, but certainly the original 5 were all Praetors, and Urabrusk definitely a bit unique among them in that it only costs 5.
Yeah, as opposed to cards like Elishnon, which is 7, and Jin Gataxia's Core Augur, which is 10.
Yeah, literally 1 million mana.
Yeah.
Whereas Urabrusk, you can just cast and start getting people. And
on turn 2, apparently.
Yeah, and then it gives all your future threats haste as well, which is a pretty big deal. And your opponent's creatures entering the battlefield tapped isn't the biggest deal in Kess pile, but any kind of matchup with creatures where you were maybe hoping to block some things coming down, that's just not a realistic proposition anymore.
Yeah, I thought Max was like really favored in the entirety of the event. He didn't end up making top 8 in the end, but his deck felt like it was very well matched up against basically the whole field, because when your opponent's playing a bunch of fatal pushes and you play Urabrusk on turn 2, then it kind of throws them off their own game plan, you know. So he also played a Light Up the Stage, which is brand new from Ravnica Allegiances, which is why you see some cards over on the left-hand side, on the right-hand side, or on the top of the screen, depending on how you tilt your head. For those of you who don't know, if you have Spectacle, which is if you've hurt your opponent, you're able to cast it for a Spectacle cost, and it's just 1 mana to exile the top 2 cards of your library, and then you can play them until your next turn, which is very unique comparative to other sort of exile-based card advantage that you find in Red.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of those red card advantage things, things like Outpost Siege, will let you play the card until the end of that turn, or sometimes they'll only kind of let you play the card immediately if it's something like
Chandra.
Yeah, Chandra Plus. But Light Up the Stage, for some reason, Wizards decided they really wanted to give Red a big old birthday present. And it says until the end of your next turn, which means that in practice, a very large amount of the time, Light Up the Stage is red, draw 2 cards.
Yeah.
Which is pretty insane.
Yeah, especially for mono red deck. I mean, you can't play counter spells with it, but otherwise it's perfect. And also the Spectacle.
You can, as long as you play them in your turn.
Yeah, okay.
Which you definitely can engineer situations where that happens. It's not ideal.
Yeah.
But
it's until your next turn, I suppose, so you can play it in your opponent's turn.
You also can definitely play it in your opponent's turn.
Whoa, is this the perfect card?
It's very powerful. And I believe a bit of a spoiler for the future, but it was in the winning list for the GP Sydney side event.
Ooh, spoiler alert. Yeah, unfortunately we did not get to cover the GP Sydney side event that occurred very recently, but very good card. Also, we have millions and millions of footage to go through, so we're probably okay for footage for now, but it sounded like a pretty good event with about 40 people attending, which Not as much as CanCon 2019, but still a pretty reasonable showing for a obscure. The Juno Nemesis will be able to stop, although it does come in tapped, I believe, both creatures. But
yeah,
he is able to put in a couple more blockers, but he's on 9 life at the moment, which I think we're just forgetting about the tapped thing at the moment. We'll see if it impacts gameplay. Hopefully not, because that is a rule of the card. That here we go. Yeah, Max has figured it out. He's like, why can't I attack right now? I realize it is because of the ability of Urbrask. But that was a very powerful turn 2 play from him. And basically what his deck is trying to do, I mean, Max's points are structured entirely in mana rocks. From what I can remember, with Sol Ring being 3 points, Mana Crypt being 2, Mana Vault being 1, and then playing little. I think that's it, right? And we're playing Strip Mine as well.
Yeah, Strip Mine would make sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean he had 5 of his points on the battlefield in that game between the Crypt and the Sol Ring, and then was able to cast out a nice Thunderbreak Regent and a Batterskull to help Urbrask kind of lay down the finishing touches.
Oof, yeah, and that's a lot of power to put on the board. A lot more than what Kess was able to deal with. We've seen Kess on footage many times before, but something that goes without saying, of which I will say right now, is that the 1-for-1 removal in Kess is pretty plentiful. But when you're casting all your stuff on turn 1, or you're, say, putting 2 6-drops onto the battlefield, a 5-drop and a 6-drop onto the battlefield, whatever turn it was, then it kind of throws you off your game plan pretty significantly.
Yeah, particularly when all those cards have haste, I think it's a pretty big deal to try and race that. It kind of accelerates all of the clocks by a turn.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. And we'll go into sideboards now. Michael seems to be siding out his Fatal Push, which is probably reasonable. I mean, he did see a Magus of the Moon, but his Terminate can probably deal with that just as well. In Max's sideboard, he has an Anger of the Gods, Boil, a Chalice of the Void, Grafdigger's Cage, Guttural Response, Ingot Chewer, Pithing Needle, Pyroblast, Pyroclasm, Red Elemental Blast, Ruination, Sorcerer's Spyglass, Sulfuric Vortex, Thought of Amethyst, and Trinisphere. Got a lot of cards to bring in against Kess, that's for sure. I'm liking the I'm even liking the Boil, actually. It's like you'll be able to destroy a bunch of your opponent's lands. They're definitely not going to go on the Magus of the Moon / Blood Moon sideboard plan, which a lot of Kess have been implementing lately. But the Ruination might not be good enough. Probably worth bringing in the Boil, but it looks like he's got a few cards to bring in with Red Elemental Blast and Pyroblast. Definitely really good staples for the Highlander format when you're thinking about sideboard cards.
Yeah, definitely. I think that I agree that Boil is probably good enough here. Ruination maybe not quite good enough, particularly with the Kess deck's ability to just fetch basics, which he's already incentivized to do because of your playing Blood Moon and Magus of the Moon.
Yeah.
I just don't think that this is really quite the right matchup for Ruination, but Max also has access to a Guttural Response as well as a Sulfuric Vortex.
Yes.
And even things like Chalice of the Void and Thorn of Amethyst and Trinisphere are potentially okay in this matchup. So he's got a lot of different pieces that he can bring in if he wants to.
I think
and I think kind of the big distinction with medium red compared to kind of the traditional big red is that a lot of the creature choices and threats that Max has chosen are planeswalkers and kind of dragons rather than big artifact creatures that people might expect from sort of a Mishra's Workshop style list. Which means that kind of the traditional sideboard plan of sideboard in all your artifact destruction, or have it mainboard in the form of cards like a Braid and Colligan's Command. It works in that you can still hurt their mana, but it's not as good. Your Fiery Compliments won't destroy 3 of their threats. In that same way, because their threats are just giant idiot dragons and things like that, which just makes the creatures a little bit more resilient.
Yeah, something that I sort of have been talking to him about while we've been talking about this deck, because it's very interesting. I definitely like this strategy. Because you're playing Sarkhan, it's like you don't need dragons to make Sarkhan good, but when you have a lot of dragons, it makes it a lot better. But unfortunately, he's also a coward and not playing a dragon's horde. So he could just be dragon tribal, but
I
he decided not
mean,
to.
Dragon's Horde in its fail state is still Manolith, which is
Yeah.
not the most embarrassing card in Magic the Gathering history. It's not quite as good as this turn 1 Batterskull that Max has just deployed. I guess when you just have 6 points and a Batterskull in your opening hand, the game is off to a pretty good start for you.
Yeah, yeah. What did we say about Big Red versus Medium Red?
Well,
this kind of feels like Big Red now.
Yeah, this was pretty much a case of them being the same deck.
Yeah.
But you know, there are certainly some differences in deck building decisions, but there's also a pretty hefty overlap between the two strategies. So Michael's pretty much in a situation where he needs to draw, a braid, or he's probably just going to die to this Batterskull.
Yeah.
He could try and hope that Max is really, really unlucky and dies to his crypt in his vault, but unfortunately Batterskull has lifelink, so even that's not very
difficult
likely.
for him. Yeah, and mana crypt being very nice to him in these last few turns because he hasn't taken too much damage yet. Also, he's on 24, so he's got a little bit of life to spend. But I'm basically at this point, Max has said, "This is what my deck has done," and like, do you have the answer, yes or no? And then once Michael does figure out the answer, because eventually he will, like Batterskull's not a unbeatable threat by itself, but every turn that Michael spends trying to cantrip and look for an answer, Max is just going to sort of redeploy another threat, and it's going to be pretty bad for Michael. And also, he has a 1 million mana on him at the moment, so...
Yeah, I mean, Max doesn't have an unlimited number of cards in hand, and he doesn't have that much red mana either, which is probably the biggest barrier to him casting a huge number of follow-up threats. But he does have a good chunk of mana, and he now has a Pyroblast as well, so... A
little bit of protection.
If he had, it's very possible that he can kind of force a couple of things through here and there. The Pyroblast is a very mana efficient answer too. I believe there's a Cryptic Command in Michael's hand.
Yeah, and that'll be a good thing for him to get. The problem is that like he didn't even cheat Batterskull into play. Like he can just recast it. Obviously, it's not the greatest thing to do, but yeah, he's just going to be ready to deploy a fresh threat soon, I think. And Michael does have a lot of answers in hand, but hopefully he has the right one for the next threat that's going to come down probably pretty soon.
Yeah, tragically, Max has placed his Batterskull on top of that beautiful hand-drawn germ token, which is possibly the single status story ever told. But...
That's right. Oh yeah, we're devoting a lot of cards to getting rid of this getting rid of this Magus of the Moon, but it's probably for the best because Michael would be in very bad shape if Magus of the Moon resolved. But yeah,
I mean he wouldn't have blue mana, but it's not like his blue mana is really helping him that much.
Yeah.
I imagine Max is totally fine with this. He's probably less fine with this. He either has to bounce his Batterskull or needs to have something in his hand that allows him to deal with the problem.
Yeah, so Dax down ticking to steal the Batterskull itself, which I believe still comes with the germ equipped to it.
Well, Max still controls the creature. So Michael, if he had a creature, could pay 5 to re-equip Batterskull. But he doesn't have a creature to re-equip it to, and he also doesn't have 5 mana.
Yeah, right. Oh, so he can actually just continue to swing.
Yep. The germ is still under Max's control.
Magic is a very fun and interesting format, interesting game. That's why your opponent can control your Batterskull, but you can still control the germ, which is very interesting. So interesting interaction there. Following up the Urabrask that he saw the game before, and talking through the sadness of putting the Batterskull on top of the germ token. But yeah, Max is going to take it down in a pretty convincing 2-0 win, and still having all of these. Apparently.
Yeah, it still has a nice Avaricious Dragon, I believe.
Ooh, yeah. That's very impressive.
Handful of gas.
So thank you, Nathan Brewer, alumni of the format, for bringing us this wonderful gem token, of which we saw for a brief few seconds, and then another couple of seconds now while I stall out, so we can all enjoy the gem token.
It is quite cute.
Yeah. But yeah, thank you so much for joining us on this rather quick round 4 from Michael and Max. So congratulations, Max. He'll be moving on to the next round. Michael unfortunately takes the L, as they say in the biz, and will be slightly less inclined to go on to the top 8 after this. But congratulations to both players. Very well played, and we will see you for the next round.